Boy can see how much time everyone has left to live and discovers his own is infinite. I'm your anime, and let's go. Imagine being the only person in the world who can see a countdown above every single human head. Your mother has it. Your best friend has it. The cashier at the convenience store, the child running through the park, the old man feeding pigeons. Everyone walking around in the world you thought you understood is suddenly carrying a glowing number above them, a precise and merciless clock, and you are the only one who can see it. Every relationship, every stranger, every crowded room becomes a cemetery you can read. Now imagine standing in front of a mirror one ordinary morning, expecting to see your own countdown, bracing yourself for whatever number is there, and finding nothing. Not a large number. Not a small number. Nothing at all. Empty space where your death should be written. This is the story of Kaito Mori, 17 years old, who woke up one day able to see when everyone around him would die, and discovered that his own death was simply never coming. And what a person does with that truth, and what it costs, and what it eventually, painfully, beautifully becomes. Before we get into this journey that is going to mess with your head in the best possible way, smash that like button. If the idea of seeing death written in numbers above every person you love genuinely unsettles you right now, subscribe so you're here for the next recap because we drop these every week, and drop a comment telling me your honest answer. Would you want to know your death date, or is the not knowing actually the gift? I need to know what you think before we start. Alright, let's dive in. Kaito Mori is 17 years old when his ability activates, and it does not happen gradually. There is no gentle awakening, no cosmic warning, no helpful narrator in his head explaining what is about to change. He simply goes to sleep on a Tuesday night in early spring as a completely ordinary teenager with completely ordinary problems. And when he wakes up on Wednesday morning and walks downstairs to the kitchen, his mother is standing at the stove making rice, and above her head, floating in a soft amber glow that he can see as clearly as he can see the steam rising from the pot, is a number. 3 years, 2 months, 14 days. He doesn't know immediately what the number means. For approximately 30 seconds, he stands in the doorway of the kitchen, telling himself he's still half asleep, that this is a visual artifact from waking too quickly, that it'll clear. His mother turns and says good morning and smiles at him, and the number stays perfectly clear and perfectly stable above her head, and his stomach drops through the floor. He goes to school because he doesn't know what else to do. There is no protocol for this. There is no number to call, no authority to report to, no chapter in any book he's ever read that says here is what you should do on the morning you wake up, able to see when everyone is going to die. So he does the thing that habits do. He follows the grooves that routine has carved, puts on his school uniform, and picks up his bag and goes. The walk to school takes 12 minutes, and in those 12 minutes, Kaito sees 43 people, and every single one of them has a number. The elderly couple walking their dog has 31 years for the man and 18 for the woman. The construction worker leaning against a scaffold is at 6 years and 3 months. 2 schoolgirls in matching uniforms who laugh at something on a phone are at 58 and 63 years respectively. A jogger who passes without looking up has 11 months and a handful of days, and Kaito stops walking for a moment when he sees that one, the short number pulsing slightly differently than the longer ones, a quality of urgency in its glow that the others don't have, and he stands on the sidewalk and watches the jogger disappear around a corner and then starts walking again because there is nothing else to do. He doesn't know yet what causes deaths. He won't ever know that specifically. The ability doesn't show him the mechanism, the accident on a wet road, the diagnosis that comes too late, the moment when the body simply decides it's done. It shows him the end point, the pure mathematical fact of how much time remains. The when, never the how, never the why, just the number. He understands the format immediately, instinctively, the way you understand fire is hot before you've ever touched it. Years, months, weeks, days, and for the shortest timers, hours. The longer the remaining time, the steadier and calmer the glow. The shorter the time, the more the number seems to pulse with something that isn't quite urgency, but is adjacent to it, a visual pressure, as if the countdown itself wants to be certain he's seeing it. He will later describe this quality, in the first of his journals, as the difference between a number and a warning. By second period, he's developed a seeding strategy. He's moved to the back corner of every classroom because being at the front means the teacher's number is at his direct eye line, and his homeroom teacher, Ms. Fujimoto, who is 32 years old and engaged and talks about her wedding plans in the 30 seconds before every class starts, is carrying 7 months and 11 days. And he cannot sit there and watch her plan her wedding while that number floats above her hair. By lunch, he is not eating. His best friend, Rio, who has been his closest companion since they were 7 years old, and discovered their shared hatred of gym class and their shared love of noodles and staying up too late watching things they were probably too young for, sits across from Kaito in the cafeteria and says he looks like he's seen a ghost and asks if he's okay. Rio has 44 years and 3 months above his head. A long, stable amber number. Safe by any measure. And yet Kaito looks at his best friend's face, and the first thing he sees is not Rio. It's the countdown. The invisible clock that has always been running and that he can now read. He says he's fine, just tired. Rio does not fully believe him but accepts it because he is a good friend who knows when to push and when to let things sit, and this is a sit moment. Kaito spends the first week doing what any person does when something incomprehensible happens. He waits for it to stop. He tells himself it's temporary, a neurological event, a stress response, something that his body will resolve on its own if he just gives it time. He drinks extra water, he sleeps early, he reduces caffeine. He does all the things you do when you're trying to fix something by pretending you can fix it through lifestyle adjustments. The numbers don't stop. They are constant and consistent and precise, and they do not care that he doesn't want to see them. They are simply there, the same way sound is simply there, the way you can't unhear something once you've heard it. Every person he sees, every single one carries their number above them, and he carries the weight of seeing all of it. He begins keeping a journal. Not yet of his feelings, he's not ready to put those into words, just of numbers, a record. He writes down people he knows and their remaining time, calculates forward from the current date to figure out approximately when each person will die. His mother in spring 3 years from now, Ms. Fujimoto by autumn of this year, Rio in his 60s. He writes these calculations down and closes the journal because if the numbers are in the book, then maybe he can leave them there instead of carrying them behind his eyes. It doesn't work. But the journal becomes a habit, and habits become the structure that holds a person together when everything else is fluid and strange. He also begins noticing the patterns. The numbers cluster in certain ranges. Most adults have decades on their counters. The elderly have less. Children, almost universally, have more than he can parse immediately. Long, stable numbers that glow with an evenness that he comes to associate, without deciding to, with safety. The few short numbers he encounters on otherwise healthy-seeming people are the ones that stay with him. The ones he writes down twice. The ones he wakes up thinking about at 3 in the morning trying to figure out if there's anything to be done. He can't stop himself from counting, over any given week, how many people he encounters with less than a year left. The answer is always higher than he wants it to be. There are always more people walking through an ordinary day with less time than they know, carrying their coffees and their phones and their ordinary plans for the weekend, and the gap between how they carry themselves and what's written above them is something he finds both heartbreaking and somehow also the thing that makes them most human. The ability to live in the now without the knowledge of when the now ends. He had that once. He's not sure he'd trade the ability for it, but he understands now, in a way he didn't at 17. Why not knowing is a mercy. At 2 months in, Kaito stands in front of his bathroom mirror and does what he's been putting off doing since the first day. He waits for his own number. The space above his reflected head is clear. He tilts his head. He steps closer. He closes his eyes and opens them with intention, as if intent might summon what isn't there. Nothing. He runs through every alternative explanation. The ability doesn't work on reflections, only on actual proximity to a living body. He pulls out his phone and activates the front camera. No number above his head in the camera view. He pulls up photographs of other people taken months ago, before any of this started, and numbers appear above their heads, slightly adjusted from what he sees in person, as if the ability accounts for elapsed time. He tries a video of himself from a school trip last year. The space above his own head in the video is unmarked. He is thorough about this. He exhausts every alternative explanation before he arrives at the one that remains. And the one that remains is that there is no number above his head because there is no death for the number to count toward. He is 17 years old, and he is apparently not going to die. He tells no one. What would he say? Hey mom, I can see everyone's death countdown, and also it turns out I'm immortal. How's dinner? He carries this the same way he carries everything else now, internally, precisely, without showing the weight of it in any way that would prompt the questions he can't answer. He starts doing the long math instead. If he doesn't die, and every person around him does, what does his life look like from the distance of a century? He'll watch his mother's 3-year countdown complete. He'll watch Ryo's 44 years eventually run out. He'll watch Ms. Fujimoto die before she gets to have her wedding. He'll watch everyone he knows and everyone he'll ever know die in sequence, one after another. An endless procession of finales that he attends and witnesses and survives. The thought is genuinely enormous. He can't look at it directly. He folds it up and puts it in the part of his mind where he's keeping the things that need to be processed later, when he has the framework for it. For now, he just focuses on the present, on today, on Ryo's 44 years, which is a lot, which is a lifetime, which is enough for right now. He gets very good at telling himself things are enough for right now. The first time he saves a life, he's eating lunch in the cafeteria, and a first-year student he has never spoken to sits down 2 tables away. She has 4 days and 17 hours above her head. He sees it, and his chopsticks stop moving. 4 days is not the shortest number he's seen. He's seen shorter, and he's watched those people from across streets and through windows and in passing, and he has not intervened. Because intervention means explanation, and explanation means revealing something that he has no idea how to reveal. He made a private rule about this without ever consciously deciding to, the rule that you make when you're not ready to act on something, but you need some kind of structure to make not acting feel like a choice rather than a failure. The rule is, he carries the knowledge and he lets things be. He doesn't interfere. 4 days. She's reading a book. She has the look of someone who eats alone by preference rather than circumstance, settled and unbothered, a person comfortable in her own company. She looks like she's going to grow up and become someone specific and interesting, and she has 4 days. He picks up his tray and moves to her table. Her name is Hana Sato. She's 13 years old, a first year. She likes astrophysics and thinks physical education should be optional and has a pet rabbit named Copernicus. She talks faster when she's nervous, which she is when he first sits down uninvited, and then slower as she settles into the conversation. He asks questions and listens to the answers, and somewhere in the natural flow of a conversation about school and hobbies and the coffee machine that's been broken since September, he learns that she walks home alone, that she takes a particular shortcut through an alley near the municipal drainage canal, that it's been raining and the forecast says it'll keep raining, and that she'd been planning to take the shortcut on Thursday because the long way adds 12 minutes to her walk home, and she has a club meeting immediately after school that she wants to get back for. He says, casually, that he heard someone slipped near that drainage canal last week. Not badly hurt, but enough to remind you that those alleys flood in heavy rain and the ground gets uneven. Might be worth taking the long way until the city sorts it out. Just a thing he heard. She says she'll think about it. He goes back to his table. His hands are shaking under it where no one can see them. On Friday, he sees her in the hallway by the second-floor water fountain, and the number above her head has reset. 61 years and several months. Whatever would have happened in that alley on Thursday, she went the long way, or stayed late, or something changed, and 61 more years of her life have snapped back into existence. He makes it to the bathroom before he starts shaking in a way he can't control, and he sits on the floor of the third stall for about 8 minutes before he gets himself together, and then he washes his face and goes to class. He opens a second journal that night. This one isn't numbers. This one is outcomes. Names and situations and what he did or didn't do and what happened after. He writes Hanasato's name in it with the date and a note that says 61 years and several months, and that feels, unexpectedly, like something close to joy even underneath everything else. The second save is messier and involves more improvisation. An elderly man at the grocery store has 2 days on his counter, and Kaito follows him through 2 aisles trying to figure out the right thing to do, and eventually ends up making enough concerned comments to the store employee that the man gets checked on, and the employee, who is diligent and notices that the man does in fact seem unsteady, and says his chest feels tight, gets him to a hospital where they find a blood clot that would have killed him in approximately 48 hours. His counter resets to 9 years and change. Kaito cries in the parking lot, and a woman walking past gives him a look of deep uncertainty. He is not elegant about this yet. He's learning. The third save is a university student at the public library with 6 days on her counter, and he somehow engineers a conversation that ends with him saying, as if it's a slightly weird impulse rather than the result of precise calculation, that he's had a strong feeling all week that he should tell her to call her father today. Just check on him. He can't explain why, just a feeling. She gives him the look you'd expect, and he backs off with an apologetic shrug, and she leaves. And 40 minutes later, he sees her outside the library, having an urgent phone conversation. And the next time he sees her, her counter has reset to 57 years. He's getting better at the architecture of coincidence, at finding the natural angle from which a concerned observation or a gentle suggestion can reach someone without requiring explanation. He is 17 years old, and he's developing a fluency in a language he invented himself, the language of knowing something you can't say and finding sideways ways to say it anyway. He is also the loneliest he has ever been in his life. This is the thing about carrying something that cannot be shared. It doesn't matter how full a room is. It doesn't matter how many people care about you. The thing you carry is not in the room with you. It's inside a wall you've built without knowing you were building it, and every person who reaches toward you bumps into the wall and doesn't know why the closeness ends there, and neither do you really, except that you know what's on your side of it. He has dinner with his mother every evening and watches her countdown tick down one day at a time and says things are fine. Things are, in the most technical sense, fine. Then he meets Aiko. Aiko Yoshida is in his AP history class. She has 53 years and several months on her counter, and she has no patience whatsoever for what she calls performative intellectualism, which is her term for the habit of saying complicated things in complicated ways as a performance of intelligence rather than as actual communication. She calls someone on this in class on the first day that Kaito is paying real attention, one of the other students making an observation that sounds impressive but doesn't actually mean anything when you slow it down and examine it. And she does that in real time, in front of everyone, with a precision and a complete lack of visible apology that makes the room go quiet for a full 3 seconds before the teacher moves on. He looks at her counter and then at her face and finds both equally interesting, which is unusual. They talk after class. She has opinions about everything and delivers them without preamble or qualification, not because she's trying to be difficult, but because she's decided, somewhere along the way, that life is too short to pretend your thoughts are softer or smaller than they actually are. She has opinions about the bias and how history gets structured into textbooks. She has opinions about the broken coffee machine and the administration's theory that students haven't noticed it's been broken since September. She has opinions about what makes someone actually intelligent versus what people commonly mistake for intelligence, and these opinions are sharp and specific, and Kaito follows them with a focus that he hasn't applied to a conversation in months. They end up talking in the courtyard for 30 minutes after class ends. Then they end up in the same lunch period 3 days later by coincidence that is actually by intent on his part. Then they end up in the same study group for a history project, legitimately by coincidence this time, and Kaito accepts this as the universe being occasionally cooperative. She is not warm in the way that most people perform warmth. She doesn't soften things. She doesn't cushion. But she is honest in a way that turns out to be a different kind of warmth entirely. The warmth of someone who respects you enough not to lie to you about what she thinks. He finds this extremely valuable in a way he can't fully articulate, except that after months of managing everything alone and not telling anyone anything true, there is something almost physically relieving about being around someone who just says what she means. He doesn't tell her anything true either. Not yet. But he starts telling her adjacent things, approximations. He tells her he's been going through something difficult that he can't fully explain, that it changed how he sees the world, that the change is isolating in a way he finds hard to describe. He's not ready to say what it actually is, not with anyone, but he's testing the edges of the wall, seeing where it might have a door. She listens in the way she does everything, with full attention and no performance of sympathy. She doesn't rush to reassure him. She asks questions. The questions are good ones, specific rather than general, which means she's actually trying to understand rather than just trying to make the conversation move past the uncomfortable part. Then she says something that he doesn't forget. She says that most people are carrying something they can't put into words, and the difference between the ones who survive it and the ones who get buried under it is almost never about the size of what they're carrying. It's about whether they find someone to carry it alongside them, even incompletely, even without full translation, even if the other person doesn't know exactly what they're holding. He thinks about this for weeks. He's 18 when his mother's counter drops below 2 years, and something changes in the way he moves through his days. He starts coming home earlier. He starts being the one to make dinner because she likes when he cooks. Her own mother taught her recipes she passed to him, and there's a continuity in that which he's aware of now in a way he wasn't before. He sits with her in the evenings instead of going out. He asks her to tell him things he's never thought to ask before, what she was like at his age, how she met his father who died when Kaito was 4 and whom he barely remembers, what she thinks he should know about the parts of life she hasn't gotten around to explaining yet. She thinks he's just growing up. She's not wrong. The weight of knowing is different than he expected. He'd thought that advance warning would feel like a mercy, that knowing would allow for some kind of preparation that would soften the eventual loss. What he discovers instead is that knowing just extends the grief. You grieve before, and then you grieve again when it happens, and the before grief doesn't count toward the after. It doesn't reduce it, it just gets added to it. He's carrying 2 years of anticipatory grief, and when the actual grief arrives, it will be its own full weight on top. He needs someone to tell. He calls the number on Dr. Nagai's card. Dr. Hiroshi Nagai is 63 years old with 22 years on his counter and a research career spent documenting what he calls anomalous perceptual phenomena in otherwise healthy individuals. He is not the kind of person who hears an unusual thing and immediately begins formulating diagnoses and dismissals. He is the kind of person who hears an unusual thing and asks clarifying questions and takes notes. And he does exactly this when Kaito comes to his office and explains, in approximately 90 difficult seconds of speaking faster than he normally speaks, because he's afraid he'll stop if he slows down, what he has been able to see since the morning in early spring 2 years ago when he woke up and the world had numbers over everyone's head. He explains the numbers. He explains the journals. He explains the saves and the losses and the particular quality of loneliness that comes from being unable to share the thing that takes up most of your interior life. And then he explains the mirror, the front camera, the test he ran on his own photographs from before the ability activated, the absence where his own number should be, the conclusion he has arrived at and has been living with alone since he was 17. Dr. Nagai is quiet for a moment after Kaito finishes. Then he says, "How long have you been carrying all of this by yourself?" 14 months, Kaito says. The professor nods in a way that contains something that isn't quite sympathy and isn't quite admiration, but is somewhere between them. Then he says they have a great deal to work through together and asks if Kaito is available on Thursday afternoons. What Dr. Nagai gives him is not answers. There are no answers, not really. What he gives him is frameworks, language, the ability to put the shape of something incomprehensible into words that make it slightly more manageable. He's documented 17 individuals over his career with unusual perceptual abilities, none identical to Kaito's but several adjacent in interesting ways. And what he's learned from all of them is that the ability, whatever its origin, is real and consistent and follows internal rules that can be understood and worked with even when they can't be changed. They work through the ethics of the saves. When is interference appropriate? What are the risks of being identified as someone who always seems to know things they shouldn't? How does he handle the cases where intervention is impossible, where the situation is too opaque or the timeline too short, where someone dies despite his awareness? He's been handling this alone and badly, carrying each loss as a failure. And Dr. Nagai's perspective, the perspective of a scientist who has spent decades in proximity to things that cannot be fully controlled, is that his obligation is to try, not to guarantee outcomes, and that he needs to stop conflating the two. They work through the harder question too. What an infinite life actually means, not abstractly, practically. What it means for relationships, for investment in the world, for the particular human problem of motivation, the question of why you do anything when you'll have time to do everything eventually. Dr. Nagai has a theory, not provable but compelling, that the ability and the immortality are connected rather than coincidental. He thinks that perceiving mortality requires being outside of it, that Kaito can read the countdown on every life because his own existence is structurally different. The way a fish doesn't have a name for water because water is everything. Or the way a person who has never been sick doesn't have a concept of health because health is just the default state. He sees death because he won't experience it. The ability is the perceptual consequence of the condition. It doesn't solve anything, but it makes the why of it feel less arbitrary. And arbitrary is the thing that had been hardest to sit with. If you're feeling the weight of what Kaito has been carrying alone for all this time, and you want to see what happens when the secret starts to crack open, when the thing he's been holding inside finally meets someone who can hold it with him, hit that like button right now and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because this story is about to get both harder and more beautiful at the same time. The moment where everything changes is coming. Let's keep going. His mother dies in March. He is 18 years old and he was there when it happened, in the hospital, her hand in his, because he had recalculated in the final week and understood approximately when the window was closing, and he rearranged his schedule to be present. She told him she was proud of him, the general comprehensive pride that doesn't require a specific achievement, just the broader fact of him. And then she was gone. The grief is not smaller for having been anticipated. He'd been sure it would be. He'd built the preparation, the advanced relationship with the eventual absence, the 2 years of more intentional presence and more deliberate conversation, the gathering of things he wanted to know while there was still time to ask. All of it was real, and none of it reduced the weight of what arrived on a Tuesday in March and did not leave. He stays home from school for 2 weeks. He eats badly and sleeps too much and doesn't answer his phone most of the time except for Rio, who comes in person on the 5th day and doesn't make it into a moment. Just shows up, brings delivery food, sets up a game, exists in the same room without demanding anything of the silence. They play through the night in a way they haven't since they were 14, and Rio makes terrible jokes about the game mechanics, and Kaito laughs a few times at things that aren't quite funny enough to merit laughter, which is a different kind of funny. And at around 2 in the morning, Rio falls asleep on the couch mid-sentence, and Kaito sits in the dark for a while and looks at Rio's counter and thinks 44 years and thinks that's a lot and thinks it's not enough, and then lies down on the floor with a blanket from the closet and sleeps until morning. This is the most useful thing anyone does for him in that period, and he never tells Rio this, but he understands it and he carries it. Dr. Nagai checks on him by text and by a visit on the 8th day that is brief and practical, and includes the suggestion that grief is not a problem to be solved through sufficient effort, and that waiting it out is the actual correct approach, even though it doesn't feel like one. Aiko texts every day. Never the same thing. Never demanding a response. Variations on "I'm thinking about you, here if you need anything." No pressure. Just wanted you to know. He reads everyone and responds to approximately a third of them, and she never makes the silence into something that needs to be addressed. He goes back to school. He catches up. He finishes his senior year adequately, which was all he'd asked of it. At graduation, Aiko is there, and Rio is there, and Dr. Nagai is there in an actual suit, looking slightly uncomfortable in the way of someone who has worn suits infrequently enough that the category hasn't become natural. He is 19 and officially an adult, and he has, stretching in front of him without visible end, the rest of time. What he decides to do with it, initially, is learn things. This is not a plan so much as a default. He has time. He has, as best he can determine, all the time there is. The natural response to all the time there is, when you are 19 and the immediate pressure of survival is not pressing, is to try to understand things. He starts with biology because if he doesn't age, then his cells are doing something that science would find genuinely interesting, and understanding the mechanism might tell him something about himself. He adds neuroscience. He adds history more formally because Aiko's influence has made him understand that knowing the past is a fundamental kind of literacy. He reads widely and eclectically, and he takes notes on everything because at 19, he doesn't know yet what he'll need to remember in 50 years, but he suspects the volume will surprise him. He and Aiko are, during this period, figuring out what they are to each other. They have been friends with the texture of something more than friends for long enough that the ambiguity has become its own comfortable territory, and neither of them has pushed to define it because defining it would require honesty that Kaito isn't ready for. She knows there's something he's not telling her. She's known for a while. She is smart enough to have registered the places where his explanations have edges, the topics he discusses in terms of shape and feeling rather than content, the specific careful vagueness he reaches for when the conversation gets close to the center of whatever he's carrying. She doesn't push. This is a gift she gives him that he won't fully appreciate until much later. He wants to tell her. The wanting is physical, an actual pressure in his chest. The specific discomfort of being known mostly but not fully by the person whose knowing matters most. He doesn't know how to say, "The person you've been falling for is apparently going to outlive everything you have ever known, and I'm watching your countdown tick away, and in 53 years your life will end and mine will continue, and I don't know what to do with that math except live inside it as honestly as I can for as long as we're in it together." He practices on Dr. Nagai first. Says, "I want to tell Aiko, and I don't know how to start." Dr. Nagai asks, "What outcome are you afraid of specifically, not generally?" Kaito says that she'll realize what she's signing up for and decide the math is too hard. That she'll look at the equation, her life finite and mine not, and determine that loving someone who outlives you by an indefinite amount is not something she wants to do on purpose. Dr. Nagai says, and if the positions were reversed, if you were the finite one, and she was the one who would outlive you, would you leave? Kaito doesn't answer immediately. He thinks about it honestly. He thinks about what he would do with the knowledge that the person he was with would still be standing when he was gone. Whether that would feel like a burden or a kind of gift, the gift of leaving someone behind who would continue, who would carry the memory of you forward into a future you couldn't see. He says, "I don't think I would leave." Dr. Nagai nods and says nothing else, which is the best possible response. He tells Aiko on a Saturday in late September, in a park, during a stretch of autumn that has the particular clarity of good weather after a long gray season. He tells her about the ability first because the ability is more demonstrable, more graspable, more immediately verifiable than the other thing. And he wants to give her something she can understand before he asks her to understand the part that is harder. He explains the numbers, the format, the journals, both of them, the numbers and the saves, the losses that happened despite his awareness, the specific quality of what it's like to walk through a world where every face you see comes with an expiration date floating above it. She listens through all of it without interrupting, with the particular attention she brings to things she's decided are important, and he can see her mind working, sorting, organizing, asking questions she's holding for after. Then he tells her about the mirror. He tells her about the camera test and the photo test and the months of alternative hypotheses and the eventual conclusion. He tells her that the number above her head, when he looks at it now, reads 53 years, and that this is stable, and that she is not in danger of anything imminent, which he tells her first because it seems like the most immediately important piece of information. She is quiet for a while, not a stunned silence, not a processing bad news silence, a thinking silence which is different. She asks, "How long have you known about me specifically?" He says, "About 3 weeks after we first talked. Once I was sure I wasn't going to stop seeing the numbers, I started looking at everyone's, and when I got to yours I looked for longer than I looked at other people's, and I've been looking at it regularly ever since." She says, "Has knowing changed how you treat me?" He considers this honestly before he answers, because she'd know if he wasn't being honest, and there's no point doing any of this halfway. He says, "Yes, I'm more present than I might otherwise be, more aware of time. But it's not performed. It's not some kind of calculated decision to extract maximum value from a limited resource. It's just what you do when you know, when you can see it in actual numbers, that nothing is permanent. You stop taking things for granted the way you can only do when you're pretending the permanence is real." She considers this. Then she says something that he turns over in his memory for years after. She says, "I already knew you saw me like time was running out. I assumed it was loss you'd been through, some experience that had made you aware of how quickly things can go. I didn't know the mechanism was literal." He says, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." She says, "You told me when you were ready to have the conversation properly." That's what telling someone something hard actually means. Not telling them the moment you know, telling them when you can actually show up for the whole conversation. She doesn't leave. This is not a small thing. He spends days afterward rotating it in his mind, the fact of her staying, and what it means about the calculation he's been running since he first looked in the mirror and found the blank space. He had been treating connection like a debt he couldn't afford. The grief of losing people was real, and he'd been adding it up prospectively, ahead of time, and the sum kept coming out too high. The cost of loving people who die is that they die, and you're still there. He'd been telling himself, quietly, at the level below language, that maybe the safer choice was to keep the wall up. Be present for people, help them, save them when he could, but not let them all the way in. Keep some distance between himself and the loss that was coming. Aiko staying doesn't make the loss smaller. It doesn't change the 53 years or what comes after. What it does is make the alternative legible in a new way. The alternative to love that ends is not safety. The alternative is the 53 years themselves, unshared, held at arm's length, protected against rather than lived inside. And that's a different kind of loss. The loss of the time itself, the waste of it.
He is 19, and he is starting to understand something about what it actually means to have all the time there is. He starts university the following spring, biology, with secondary work in psychology and history. He is, by this point, significantly more functional than he was at 17, which is a low bar in some ways, but also represents genuine progress. He manages the ability the way you eventually learn to manage chronic pain or chronic noise, not by making it disappear, but by developing a relationship with it that doesn't consume everything else. The numbers are always there. He can always read them. He doesn't always read them compulsively. He's learned to let them exist in peripheral awareness rather than constant foreground. He's adding saves to his journal at a rate of roughly 1 per month. Some months more, some less. He's gotten better at the architecture of intervention, better at finding the natural approach, the coincidence that doesn't feel engineered, the suggestion that lands without requiring explanation. He's had a few close calls where someone asks questions he has to deflect, and he's developed a collection of deflections that he deploys with increasing smoothness. He's not proud of the lying exactly, but he understands that the truth is not available to him as a tool in most situations, and he uses what is available. The losses in the second journal grow too. He has learned not to experience each one as personal failure. Dr. Nagai helped him understand the distinction between responsibility and omnipotence, between the obligation to try and the obligation to succeed, and he applies this understanding imperfectly, but genuinely. He cannot save everyone. He cannot always find the angle. Some timers run out before he can position himself to intervene. Some situations are too opaque for him to find the thread. Some people cannot be reached through the sideways approaches he has access to. He tries every time. When he fails, he writes the name in the second journal and sits with it for a day and then continues. There is one loss that year that he doesn't move past as cleanly as the others. A man he sees on the train platform every Thursday for 6 weeks, commuting in the same direction at the same time, whose counter is ticking down fast, under 3 weeks when Kaito first notices him and falling. He tries 3 different approaches across those 6 weeks. He starts conversations that he tries to steer toward questions about health and well-being. He makes a call to a community health line about whether there are ways to connect someone you're worried about with resources when you don't know them well. He even, once, follows the man to his office building exit and almost says something direct, is 2 words from it, and loses the nerve when the man turns and looks at him because what would he say? What sentence exists? He can't find it. The man dies on a Tuesday with 6 days still on the counter. Not a suicide. A cardiac event. Kaito pieces together from the news. Undetected. Rapid. Probably nothing any intervention of his could have reached in time. He writes the name in the journal, and then writes 3 pages about the gap between knowledge and power, which he's been thinking about since 17, but hasn't articulated this clearly before. He knows when, he doesn't know how. And knowing when, without knowing how, means that sometimes the when arrives faster than the circumstances allow him to do anything about. He can see the shape of the loss,
but not always find the door. He is 21 and in his third year at university and beginning to understand himself as something more than a person managing an unusual condition. He is beginning to understand that the condition and the immortality together have a shape, a purpose, not assigned from outside, but emerging from what he's been doing with them. He is the person who sees the endpoints. He is also the person who will be standing after all the endpoints are passed. These two facts together point somewhere, even if the somewhere is not yet fully visible. He meets Rin Hayashi at 22, and everything shifts. He's in a large undergraduate lecture, one of those survey courses in biology that fills a hall with 200 students, and she's across the room and 3 rows forward, and the space above her head is unmarked. He blinks. He refocuses. He looks at the students immediately around her to make sure the ability is functioning normally and their numbers are clear and present. He looks back at her. Nothing. He sits very still for the rest of the lecture and thinks. The assumption of singularity has been so foundational to how he's understood his situation that dismantling it requires real effort. He has been the only one. That has been a structural feature of his understanding, the basis for the specific loneliness that comes from having an experience that is by definition unshared. If there is a second person, that foundation shifts. He doesn't approach her that day. He goes home and thinks carefully about what it would mean to tell someone they're going to live forever when they don't know yet, and how different that conversation is from any he's had before. Aiko knowing was hard. This would be harder, because Aiko at least knew her own situation. Whoever this girl is, she's navigating whatever this is, or not navigating it because she doesn't know it's happening, without the context that Kaito had to develop painfully over 2 years. He tells Dr. Nagai the next day. Dr. Nagai, who is 71 now with 13 years left on his counter, responds with the measured interest of a scientist who has been waiting for exactly this kind of development without knowing he was waiting for it. He asks how many viewings Kaito has had of her timer space. Kaito says 3 confirmations at different times and distances. Dr. Nagai says that changes the model significantly, that if there are 2, there are likely more, that the singularity has always been a provisional assumption based on insufficient data rather than a confirmed fact. He says, you should approach her carefully. If she doesn't know what she is, this is a conversation that has to be handled with significant care. Kaito spends several months in her orbit before he does anything direct. Her name is Rin Hayashi. She's 19 and in a different discipline, environmental science, but their paths overlap enough through shared lecture series and the university's common spaces that a low-grade acquaintanceship develops naturally. She is self-sufficient in a way that comes from practice rather than preference, the kind of person who has learned to operate without relying on other people because relying hasn't been reliably safe. She's warm within that, genuinely warm, but the warmth has a boundary around it and she doesn't let people pass the boundary quickly. She has an ability. He figures this out through careful observation over several weeks. She looks at people differently than other people look at people, a slight track and assess quality in her gaze that he recognizes because he has it too. She occasionally reacts to something about a person before that person has said or done anything to explain the reaction. She keeps a private journal that she writes in sometimes after conversations, jotting things down quickly, which he recognizes as the habit of someone trying to externalize information their mind is holding. Her ability is different from his. He won't know exactly what it is until they talk, but the signs are clear enough. She doesn't know she's different from other people in the fundamental way. He's nearly certain of this. She has an unusual perceptual ability, and she's been managing it the way you manage something strange about yourself when you've never had a framework for it, just integrating it into your functioning, attributing it to intuition or sensitivity or some other normal-sounding category, making it fit the world you think you're in. She doesn't know she's not going to die, because she's never looked in the mirror for her own counter and found nothing, or if she has, she doesn't know what to make of the absence. He tells her in pieces. The way you tell someone something that requires them to rebuild their understanding of themselves. He starts with the ability. He demonstrates it carefully, in a way that makes denial difficult without being aggressive about it. He knows things about people around them that he shouldn't know. When she tests him, hesitantly, asking him to look at specific strangers and tell her what he sees, and what he says aligns with something she confirms through her own perception. The conversation becomes undeniable. Then he tells her about himself, what he's been navigating since 17. The numbers, the immortality, the 2 years of carrying it alone before Dr. Nagai, the learning curve, the ongoing complicated project of building a life when the life doesn't end. Then he asks her, have you ever looked at your own reflection and noticed that something everyone else seems to be missing above your head? Her face changes. It's a small change, but he's learned to read small changes in faces because the ability has trained him to pay close attention to the people in front of him. Something shifts in her eyes, something settling, like a question that has been hovering unanswered for a long time suddenly landing. She says quietly, I thought I was just seeing myself wrong. I thought there was something about the angle, that it would be there if I looked properly. Her ability, she explains, is color-based rather than numerical. She sees auras, faint and specific, that correspond to health and vitality and something she can't fully name, an ambient sense of a person's aliveness, the quality of the living rather than the countdown of it. She's been seeing them since she was 15 and assumed for a couple of years that everyone saw them too. The friend she eventually mentioned it to looked at her with the specific expression of someone who doesn't know what to say to a thing that doesn't fit their reality. And Rin understood immediately and never mentioned it to anyone again. She has been doing this alone for 4 years. She is 20 years old and she has been carrying a perception of the world that is fundamentally different from everyone around her. And she has told no one, and she has managed because she is the kind of person who manages. And sitting across from Kaito, he can see it, somewhere between relief and the specific ache of a loneliness that is only fully felt when it ends. He introduces her to Dr. Nagai that weekend. The professor, who is now 80 years old and whose remaining counter reads slightly less than 6 years, is visibly moved in a way that Kaito has rarely seen him be visibly moved. He looks at the two of them sitting across from him in the office that smells like old books and good coffee, and he says something that Kaito will carry with him for a long time. He says, you two might be the first of something. Not unique in the universe, not even unique among humans, but the first who have found each other. And the ones who find each other first are the ones who build the map for everyone who comes after. Kaito sits with that for a long time. He thinks about Aiko, who is at home right now probably annotating something and making tea in the pot she keeps on the desk, which she insists is a normal thing to do. He thinks about Ryo, who is 22 and at a university in another city studying engineering and calls every few weeks and is, reliably, completely himself. He thinks about Dr. Nagai, who has less than 6 years now on his counter and who has spent 40 years building the framework that made it possible for Kaito to stop being alone in what he is. He thinks about the map for everyone who comes after. He is 22 years old and he realizes, starting to live his infinite life rather than just surviving it. These are different things. Surviving is transactional. Living is directional. He has direction now, or the beginning of one. Find the ones without counters. Help them understand what they are. Build the map. Be the resource he needed at 17. He has, apparently, all the time that exists to do it. The first person who confronts him directly is not someone he's saved. It's a woman named Professor Ida, who teaches biochemistry at his university and has been watching him with the particular attention of someone who notices discrepancies between what people say and what they do. She's 47 with 31 years on her counter, and she calls him into her office at the end of his second year and closes the door and asks him, without preamble, how he knew about the faulty equipment in Lab C 3 days before the maintenance report flagged it. He'd been in that lab. He'd seen a graduate student with an 11-day counter working near the equipment in question and had asked what they were running, and had mentioned casually that he'd heard similar equipment at another institution had been flagged for a calibration issue recently, and maybe it was worth running a check. The graduate student's counter reset to 42 years. The equipment was found to have a pressure regulation failure that would have caused an explosion severe enough to kill anyone in the immediate vicinity. Professor Ida knows about the equipment. She doesn't know about the counter reset. But she is smart enough to have noticed that Kaito Mori has an unusual record of being present or adjacent to situations where minor interventions prevented significant accidents. And she has been collecting data on this with the patience of a scientist who understands that a pattern is only a pattern once you have enough data points. She shows him the list, 8 incidents over 2 years. She isn't accusing him of anything. She's asking him what she's looking at. He could deflect. He has deflections. He is good at deflections now. But she is laying out the actual pattern in front of him with the specificity of someone who has done the work. And there's a quality to the confrontation that makes the deflection feel not just dishonest, but somehow beneath the moment. She has noticed something real. She has treated it seriously enough to document it. She is asking a genuine question. He doesn't tell her everything. He tells her some things. He tells her he notices when something seems off about a situation in ways he can't always articulate. That he's learned to take those feelings seriously and to find ways to act on them without making a big thing of it. He tells her this is something he's been managing since he was a teenager and that he'd appreciate her discretion. She looks at him for a long moment and then says that discretion is easy when someone is using what they have to prevent harm rather than cause it, and that he should know his academic record doesn't reflect anything close to what his practical attention to detail suggests he's actually capable of, and that she would be happy to supervise his doctoral work if he's interested. He is interested. He had not anticipated being interested. The shift in his academic trajectory from adequate to genuinely engaged happens almost accidentally, through that conversation, through the experience of being seen clearly by someone who didn't blink at what she saw. He completes a doctorate in cellular biology that takes 5 years and produces research on cellular senescence, the biological processes of aging that is quietly informed by his own existence, even when it cannot reference it. He does not solve immortality. He wasn't trying to. But he understands the mechanisms of aging in a way that is only possible when you have the particular motivation of understanding a process you're exempt from. Professor Ida is at his doctoral defense. She asks him 2 questions that are so precisely calibrated to the actual center of his research that the other committee members look slightly wrong-footed, like they should have asked those questions first. He answers them well. He thanks her afterward, and she says only that she hopes he keeps paying attention. He does. Real quick before we get to the part where Kaito's purpose crystallizes and where the losses hit hardest, and where he finally understands what forever actually looks like, lived from the inside. Hit that like button. If this story has gotten into your head in the way that good anime always does, subscribe so you're here when we post next week, because these stories are going to keep coming, and comment below what you think Kaito should do with infinite time, because the answer he arrives at is not what you'd expect. Now let's finish this. Dr. Hiroshi Nagai dies on a Thursday morning in November. He is 86 years old, and his counter has been running low for 2 years, and Kaito has been in the office every week for those 2 years, not just for the work, but for the company, the specific company of the only person who has known the full truth of him since the beginning. He is there when it happens. He rearranged his schedule 3 days in advance based on the precise arithmetic of what the counter showed, and he was there. He held the hand and heard the words, and what Dr. Nagai said at the end was characteristically practical and characteristically kind. He said that the most important thing he'd learned in 86 years of studying unusual things was that the anomaly that seems to break the rules is always, if you look long enough, the thing that reveals what the rules are actually about. He didn't explain what he meant by this. He didn't have to. Kaito understood that it was about him, that the ability and the immortality together, the apparent anomaly, were not a violation of how things work, but a revelation of something about how things work that science hadn't gotten to yet. He is not a bug. He is a data point pointing towards something larger. He sits in the office for an hour after. He looks at the books on the walls and the files in the cabinets and the notes on the desk. 40 years of documentation, 17 individuals before Rin and Kaito, each one a life that science didn't know how to describe, but that was real anyway. He is 31 now, or appears to be, or is in the biological sense, though the calendar years are beginning to accumulate behind the apparent age in a way that will eventually become impossible to explain to people who meet him. He is 31, for what looks like the foreseeable future. He takes the files, with the estate's permission, with the understanding that he will continue the work. He has been the work for 15 years already. Now he has the files to match. The years after Dr. Nagai's death are the years in which Kaito comes into himself most fully, which is not the trajectory you might expect grief to produce, but is the actual one. He is, in the absence of his first mentor, forced to become the thing he'd been practicing being, the person who knows. The authority, not because he sought it, but because he's the one who has the files and the years and the first-hand experience, and there is no one else. He finds the third person without a counter when he is 34, in Seoul, through circumstances that start with a conference and end with a late-night conversation in a hotel lobby after he noticed the absence above the head of a biochemist named Min Jun, who was presenting a paper on atmospheric chemistry. Min Jun's ability is auditory. He hears the harmonic frequency of structural integrity, buildings and bridges and geological formations, making sounds that only he can register. A kind of architectural hearing that has made him an extraordinarily intuitive engineer, while simultaneously making him feel like he lives in a world full of noise that no one else can hear. He is 30 years old when Kaito finds him. He has been managing his ability for 13 years, and his immortality for, as far as he can determine, just as long, having noticed the absence in his own reflection at 17 in the same way Kaito did, and having arrived at the same conclusion through the same sequence of tests and having told absolutely no one for 13 years, because who would you tell? The conversation between them, the first conversation Kaito has with someone who has already been through the full recognition and made the peace with it and come out the other side still functional, is different from the conversations he's had with Rin and with the others. Min Jun doesn't need the orientation, not all of it. He needs something harder and rarer, a peer, someone to compare notes with, someone to talk to about the specific arithmetic of what it means to build a career, a reputation, a body of work, while knowing that the career will outlast every institution that might house it, and the reputation will outlast every person who currently holds it. They talk until 3 in the morning. They meet again at breakfast. They exchange contact information, and they actually use it, which is the real measure of whether a connection has taken. He finds the 4th at 37, the 5th and 6th within a few months of each other at 41, the 7th through 12th across the following decade, each one found through the ability, the unmarked space above a head in a crowd or a conference or a library, each one navigating their own version of the thing at their own stage of having come to terms with it or not. He develops the orientation through practice, through the cumulative experience of how different people need different things at the beginning of understanding what they are. Some need the framework first, the intellectual structure into which they can organize the experience. Some need the community first, proof that they're not alone before they can take in any information. Some need the permission to grieve first, to name the specific losses that come with being different from everyone around you in the most fundamental way. He learns to read which is needed and to lead with it. He develops what he calls the orientation, borrowing the term from his own experience with Dr. Nagai but systematizing it now, making it transferable. The first year of understanding what you are, the specific challenges and the specific gifts, the relationships and how they change once the truth is known, the grief of outliving people you love, which doesn't become smaller with repetition, but does eventually become something you know how to carry rather than something that carries you. The orientation has stages he didn't name at first, but that became clear across multiple people navigating them. The first stage is disbelief followed by verification, which is the same sequence he went through at 17, and which everyone goes through regardless of how long they suspected something was different. You need to prove it to yourself before you can live in it. He helps with that. He knows the tests. He knows the sequence of confirmations that add up to a weight of evidence that becomes undeniable. He provides them methodically and without drama. The second stage is what he calls the inventory, which is the process of going through your life and understanding what has to be renegotiated now that you know what you are. Relationships, especially. Every relationship exists in an implied framework of mutual mortality, the shared understanding that both parties are running on limited time, even if they don't talk about it. When one person steps outside that framework, the relationship doesn't automatically break, but it has to be consciously rebuilt on a different foundation. Some relationships can be, some can't. He is honest about this in the orientation. He doesn't sugarcoat the losses. You will lose people, and the losing doesn't stop. What changes is what you build around the loss, the structure that allows you to continue without either denying the grief or being consumed by it. The third stage is purpose, which is the hardest and the most personal, and the one he helps with least directly, because it cannot be given from outside. Each person without a counter has to find their own answer to the question of what you do with forever. He doesn't think there is one right answer. He doesn't think the answer is the same for everyone. What he can offer is his own answer, not as a prescription, but as an example. This is one way a person with infinite time can choose to spend it. There are others. The finding of your own is the work of decades, not of a single conversation. He is, as he tells Rin in one of their early conversations, and then tells everyone who comes after, not an authority on how to live a life without an end. He is just someone who has been doing it longer than they have, and who has learned some things that he can pass forward. He is the map, not the destination. He is still with Aiko. This fact is not simple, and it is not without its difficulties, but it is a fact, and it is the fact he values most. They have been together in the way that they've been together, which has evolved over the years into something that has no precise template in the relationships he observes around him, because it has no template to follow. She is aging in the way that people age. He is not. The gap between them, which at 20 and 19 felt like nothing, has become something visible and sometimes strange. She is 45 now. He appears to be 31. They have had many conversations about this, and they have never arrived at a resolution because there isn't one. There is only the choice to keep choosing each other, knowing the asymmetry, and she keeps choosing and he keeps choosing. She knows everything. She has known everything since he told her in the park in September when they were 20 and 19. There is nothing between them that is held back from the other side of the wall. This is the most valuable thing he has in his life, and he knows it with a clarity that has only increased over time. The question that strangers sometimes ask, or would ask if they knew enough to ask it, is how he keeps going. How you sustain investment in a world where every investment eventually ends. The honest answer is that he stopped thinking about investment as a transaction that requires adequate return. A transaction is about what you get back. What he has is not a transaction. It is a practice. A daily practice of showing up for a world that is finite and fragile, and full of people doing their best with whatever countdown they're carrying above their heads, whether or not they can see it. He saves a woman from a house fire at 41. He saves 3 people from a bridge collapse at 44, including a child whose counter had been reading 48 hours when Kaito walked past the bridge and noticed the structural cracks that no one else seemed to be looking at, and made a series of phone calls that he admits afterward was the most aggressive intervention he'd ever attempted. Calling the city's infrastructure line and a journalist and a structural engineer, he knew through the university in a rapid sequence that led to the bridge being closed 6 hours before it came down. He saves his own student, a graduate assistant named Kenji, who has 43 years on his counter and zero awareness that his habit of eating lunch at his desk while working with chemicals is going to result in a reaction that would kill him by Friday, by the simple expedient of introducing a new safety protocol and making Kenji personally responsible for enforcing it. Not all saves are dramatic. Most aren't. Most are the small architecture of noticing and redirecting, the gentle word that sends someone home a different way, the text sent at the right moment, the question asked that makes someone reconsider a plan they'd stopped questioning. He is, by his mid-40s in the calendar, very good at this. The fluency he developed at 17 through necessity has become something close to expertise. She is, among the things she is, the person who made him understand why the living matters even when you can see how it ends. He watched her argue this into him, indirectly, through the years of being fully known and continuing to choose. And somewhere in that watching, he stopped having to argue it to himself. He is 38, apparently, when he starts to understand something about grief that Dr. Nagai never found the right words for. He has buried now his mother and his first mentor in Rio, who died at 65 in the way of people who've lived fully and fast, suddenly and without long suffering, and who left behind more people who loved him than the room at his funeral could hold. He has buried others. He will bury others. Each loss is whole, not diminished by the previous ones, not made more bearable through the accumulation of practice. The grief is always complete. What changes is not the grief. What changes is what he does with the afterward. He has been watching the people he loves die since he was 18, and he has observed that the afterward is not a return to before. You don't go back to the world as it was before the person was in it. You carry the person forward. You carry everything they gave you, every way they shaped what you know and how you see and who you choose to be, and you bring that into the next year and the year after that. The person doesn't vanish. They transform into something you carry. He is made of his mother's kitchen and her recipes and the hot chocolate she made when things were hard. He is made of Rio's easy patience and his refusal to make things more serious than they needed to be, and the way he showed up in person on the 5th day without being asked. He is made of Dr. Nagai's frameworks and his patience with what couldn't be resolved, and his understanding that the anomaly reveals the rule. He carries all of them. He will carry all of them, apparently, for longer than any of them would have understood. This is one of the specific jobs of an infinite life. You are the keeper of the ones who end. You carry them forward into the future they didn't get to see. You are the continuity. He is 49 in the calendar when Aiko dies. She is 73. Her counter ran its full course, stable to the end, no dramatic illness, no sudden crisis. She died in the way that she lived, with full presence and without unnecessary drama, on a Wednesday morning in spring, her hand in his, and what she said at the end was the thing he had told her she'd say, and she had laughed when he told her, and said that sounded exactly like her and she was glad. She said, "You know what the best thing about loving someone who'll live forever is. You don't have to worry about them." He held her hand until there was nothing left to hold. The room was quiet in the way rooms get when someone leaves them permanently, a specific quality of absence that is different from ordinary quiet, heavier, with more texture. He sat there for a long time. He was not ready to leave the room, and so he didn't leave it until which was about 2 hours later. Then he went home and made tea and wrote the sentence in his journal and sat with the grief and let it be exactly as large as it was. He didn't try to make it manageable. He didn't reach for the frameworks or the philosophical scaffolding or the accumulated practice of 49 years of watching endings and finding ways to continue. He just sat with it. He cried for a long time. He ate nothing that day. He slept badly. He called Rin, who answered immediately and stayed on the phone with him for 3 hours and said almost nothing and didn't try to make anything better, which was what he needed. In the morning, he got up and washed the dishes because Aiko would have wanted the kitchen clean and because there was a today that needed living, even if the today felt like it had nothing in it. He made the rice the way his mother taught him. He opened the window because Aiko always opened the window in the morning, even in winter, because she said rooms needed to breathe. He kept opening the window after that. It became one of the ways he carried her. This is what he's learned. This is the thing that took him from 17 to his 50s to understand fully. The infinite life still contains today. Still contains breakfast and dishes and the ordinary maintenance of existing. And the ordinary maintenance of existing is not a lesser thing than the extraordinary moments. It is the material from which everything extraordinary is built. He is, as best he can determine, never going to die. He has made his peace with this in pieces and incompletely, and continues to make peace with it in the incremental way that some things only ever become slightly more bearable rather than fully resolved. But the making peace is ongoing, and that ongoing quality is not failure. It's just the form that acceptance takes when there's enough time for it to be a practice, rather than an event. He is 54 in the calendar, appearing to be 31, when the network of people without counters reaches 12. 12 individuals across 4 countries with 7 different kinds of unusual ability, all of them navigating the same fundamental thing from different starting points with different specifics. He has developed something for them that he didn't have at 17, a community, not large, not formal, but real. The kind of real that comes from shared understanding rather than shared circumstance. He meets each of them in the way he met Rin, gradually, carefully, over time. He gives each of them the orientation he developed with Dr. Nagai's files and his own years. He introduces them to each other, 2 by 2, and then in small groups when they're ready. He is not a leader of this community. He doesn't want to be a leader of it. He is more like the person who was there first and knows the terrain and can point out where the paths are without requiring that everyone take the same path. He is the map Dr. Nagai predicted. There is, it turns out, always someone who needs it, Always a 20-year-old who woke up one day with numbers above people's heads or colors around them, or the ability to hear the emotional frequency of objects, or any of a dozen other things that science hasn't learned to describe yet. Always someone who's been carrying it alone and thinking they were the only one. Always someone who needs to be told, "You are not broken. You are not wrong. You are just early." He keeps the journals, all of them now. The numbers, the saves, the losses, the network, the orientation notes, the observations from a life that keeps accumulating years behind a face that stays 31. He keeps them in a way that is increasingly aware of their eventual audience, the people who will come later, who will need the record of what the first ones figured out in the years when they didn't have each other to ask. He is building something, not quickly, not dramatically. The way things that last are built, which is slowly, over time, with full attention to each piece, without requiring that the shape of the whole be visible before the work begins. He is apparently not going to run out of time to build it. The boy who woke up at 17 to a world of countdowns and found no countdown of his own grew into a man who understood, slowly and imperfectly, and sometimes at great cost, that the absence of an endpoint is not a gift that arrives finished. It is a possibility that requires building. It requires choosing every day to be present in a world of loss, to love people whose loss is already written above them, to witness every ending with the same quality of attention you'd want someone to bring to yours, to carry the dead forward into the years they didn't get. He is the one who stays. This is not a tragedy. It became, over time, the thing he chose to make it. The specific and useful thing that only someone who stays can do. Witness, carry, map. He is 31 years old, apparently. He has been 31 for a long time, and will be 31 for what appears to be the rest of everything. He makes breakfast. He writes in the journals. He answers messages from people without counters who are navigating their first year and need to know they're not alone in it. He tends to the work. He thinks about his mother sometimes, in the kitchen, when he's making rice the way she taught him. He thinks about Rio. He thinks about Dr. Nagai's office and the smell of old books. He thinks about Aiko, every day, the way you think about someone who is woven into your understanding of yourself, not as a presence you're missing exactly. Not just that, but as a texture of who you are now, the way years of loving someone specific and being loved by them become structural to how you see things. He thinks about Hana Sato, who is 63 years old now, and doesn't know that a stranger sat down at her lunch table 28 years ago and said something about a flooded alley, and that she has 61 more years because of it. She is doing something with those years. He doesn't know what. He doesn't need to know what. The living of the years was the point. The 61 years were the point. Whatever she's doing with them is the whole thing. He thinks about the journal entries, Hanasato's name in careful handwriting, and the date and the reset counter. All the names after that. 87 saves in the current count of the second journal, and the number is imprecise because sometimes he doesn't know for certain whether the outcome would have been different without his intervention. Sometimes the circumstances are ambiguous enough that he can only mark it as possible rather than confirmed. He marks those differently in the journal with a question mark rather than a confirmed reset. There are 22 question marks. He prefers the confirmed ones but accepts that certainty is not always available. He thinks about the third journal. The 12 people without counters and the additional 7 he has found since, 19 in total spread across the world, each one navigating their own version of the permanent, and each one having found the others through the network he and Rin and Dr. Nagai's legacy built. The youngest current member of the network is 20 years old, found in Oslo 6 months ago, who sees mathematical patterns overlaid on physical space, equations written into the architecture of the world that only she can read. She is terrified and brilliant, and in her first month of the orientation. She called him on a Thursday and talked for 4 hours, and he answered every question he could and told her honestly when he didn't know the answer. That honesty mattered. He's learned. The pretense of knowing everything is the quickest way to break trust with someone who desperately needs to trust the person they're learning from. He says, "I don't know" to the questions he doesn't know, and she hears in that the proof that what he does know is real. He is apparently never going to die. He has made his peace with this in pieces and incompletely, and continues to make peace with it in the incremental way that some things only ever become slightly more bearable rather than fully resolved. But the making peace is ongoing, And that ongoing quality is not failure. It's just the form that acceptance takes when there's enough time for it to be a practice rather than an event. There will be more people to find. There will be more names in all 3 journals, saves and losses and network members, the record building itself forward into a future he can see with the same patience he's learned to see everything. There will be more mornings with the window open, the way Aiko opened it, and more evenings with rice made the way his mother made it. There will be more people who need to be told they're not alone in it. More first conversations in university libraries and lecture halls and parks in autumn. More orientations, more slow, difficult, honest tellings of what the life without a counter looks like from inside it. He has all the time that exists to do all of it. He takes this seriously. He does not waste it. He shows up. He carries all of them. He is made of all of them. He is the continuity they didn't get to have, and he takes that seriously and he keeps going. There is always a next day. He has all of them. He uses every one.